Paolo Ciccone is an Italian-born portrait artist who's now residing here in Charleston, and he's making lots of waves with his black and white portraits of low-country influencers and many more. Today, I talk one-on-one with him for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Paolo Ciccone, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Oh, likewise. I know that you are an Italian-born portrait artist now residing in historic Charleston, South Carolina. What's new? What's now with you and your business?
Interesting you're actually asking that question because I just started my new line. In the past, I was going under a different name because, Paolo Ciccone, it's kind of tough. I'm Italian, it's a different pronunciation. I didn't want to impose, but I got so much feedback from branding experts, other photographers, mentors, etc. They said, you know what, you should really go and use your own name. I said, really? So they convinced me, and so I started a new line that goes under my name, paolociccone.com. Would be okay if I show how it is spelled?
Sure.
Let me just prepare a quick thing and then I'll get it out of this. So I don't know if you can see it. That's
amazing.
Right. Thank you.
That is, yes, sir. I love it. I truly love it.
Thank you. So that is my new high impact portraiture for successful executives, for people who want to create a legacy, for everyday people who want to really have a portrait that will hang in their home and that it will be telling their story and be something they can pass from generation to generation.
Yes, sir.
That's my goal. The idea is to really create a legacy for people, because we are here on this planet for a short while,
yes, sir.
And then I like to give people the incredibly valuable treasure that is to leave a legacy for the generations to come.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Do you have portraits of your parents or grandparents?
No.
Well, how would you
come
feel?
to you?
I would. How would you feel? If you had, let's say, a beautiful portrait of your grandparents, or even their parents.
Right.
It's great to be able to. So my wife, for example, she has a great photo of her mom's family from 1927.
Wow.
And we have it, we have it in our living room, and I always look at them. It's like, it's so great to not just see the faces, but see, where they were, what they were wearing, what was the story, what was behind them, a little bit of mischief you might capture here, all that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Paolo, let me ask you this. How would you tell your story right now in a portrait?
Right. Well, that's an incredibly great question. There are many ways, but the way I always start is by having a conversation with my clients, and I don't care how long it takes. I mean, if they want to tell me the entire story, I'll be happy to listen. Based on what is important. Sometimes they tell me that there is an object, a symbol, something. Just recently, I had a couple of women who wanted to have their portrait together, and there was a very specific symbol that they wanted to have in their portrait. There's something that punctuates their daily life, and they wanted to have it in their portrait. So we made it happen. I created a beautiful black and white classic Hollywood portrait with them standing in a beautiful pose, and this object, which I'm now going to divulge. But anyway,
Wow.
Perfectly innocent, actually. I'm very respectful of my clients'
Sure.
privacy. So yeah, these are the things, that it comes out of the conversation, really.
Other conversations are people having about your portraits?
Hmm. Well, it's a conversation I had with them before, and maybe I didn't understand the question correctly. If
Oh,
you
no
tell me
worries. I know that recently you've been shooting a lot of, portraits of low country influencers here in this town.
Yes.
So, what's that conversation about your portraits when you go around the low country?
Well, thank you. So that project was something that I started because I wanted to. So I met a lot of different people here while I'm talking, in different, maybe at the chamber,
Yes.
meetings with the Chamber of Commerce, or maybe
Right.
at the Harbor Club, or maybe at other meetings. And I thought, there are some interesting stories, and I noticed that some of these people actually do a lot of good in our society. Maybe people don't know about them, and I wanted to highlight them and for a moment shine a little spotlight there and tell them their story, tell the story that is around them to as large a public as I can. You just post on Facebook, on the website. The usual. No, we have social media today, and I'm taking advantage. And the response has been phenomenal. I'm so glad. I mean, I see it like yesterday.
Yes, sir.
I posted something on Facebook about a great guy. His name is Gus Olaler.
Oh,
And,
yes.
you know him. You know Gus.
Know of him. Yeah, I know of him.
And so the amount of times that post is being reshared by other people, it was like great. The more they reshare it, the more the story goes around, and this is exactly the point. Now, the wonderful thing is when I do this, I create it's basically a portrait and interview. Yeah. So I did a little interview, and it's in a written form because I want to tell the story, and how these people are helping the world professionally. What's happening with them. And so I sat down together with Gus here in my studio. We did his portrait, and then I printed the portrait on canvas. Okay, and I showed it to him just because the idea is that possibly maybe a year from now, or when it will be possible, we can put together all these portraits and have a little exhibit, a little something that where we show to the public these portraits and these stories. And so I showed it to Gus, and he was like, "Ah, it's different when you see yourself in a portrait,
Absolutely.
all of a sudden, it's real. Yeah. You see the texture of the canvas, and he basically it took it away from me. I brought it home.
Wow.
And to me, that is the biggest reward of somebody who wants it so much. And I'm glad for him because Gus is a great guy, and he's able to enjoy the portrait today. And tomorrow, the people who will be after him will be able to see him, in his prime as a strong, powerful, friendly guy that he is. And that's the stuff that matters to me.
And Paolo, let me ask you, with all these portraits that you've done with low country influencers and other folks, which one of those portraits describes you as a photographer, as a person growing up in your country?
You're asking such great questions. You cannot do a piece of art without putting a bit of yourself in there, and so the new direction I'm taking today, the paolociccone.com, is really the culmination of years and years of looking at the portraits of great artists like George Horrell, who was the head photographer for MGM in the 1930s. Their artistry is something that has been largely lost because of the way they were working back then, which is very different from today. So I spent years trying to studying that style, and it's so different. It's black and white. It's using dramatic lighting, and today there is a lot of very broad lighting. To me, dramatic lighting is what really we can use to tell the story of somebody, where we can create a portrait that is impressing on people a certain emotion because of the dance of light and shadow. If everything is lit, then it's like one of those songs where they just are at 11 all the time.
Yes.
Like there is no break, there is no punctuation.
Right.
So I like the black and white because once we remove the colors, there's only light and darkness that are standing there. So it creates this dance of light. I love that. And so now, as much as I can, I create portraits based on that style, classic Hollywood, high impact, black and white. I was just talking about this yesterday with a friend, and she said, "You know what? Class never goes out of style."
That's right.
So you know what? I'm gonna use it from now on. And it's so, how many people on Pinterest are collecting those old Hollywood images, like thousands of people.
Right.
They might not know why, but those images are like 80 or 90 years old. I mean, think about it. That's an enormous amount of time.
Yes.
Especially in today's society where everything goes so fast. An enormous amount of time, and still today, people are mesmerized by those images of Joan Crawford, those images of Dietrich, those images of Jean Harlow, Clark Gable, all those amazing stars, because of the dramatic dance of light and shadows, the sharp lighting, and that style just sings to me. And it took me years to get there, but finally I got it. Yeah. So I'd love to bring that to my clients in a more modern interpretation, if you want. But yeah.
As a matter of fact, it took you, as you said, several years to understand and decode the art. Yes. You now use those secrets, obviously, to learn to create high impact portraits for your clients. So what do you see in terms of lines, shapes, colors, and textures?
What
do you see in terms of lines, shapes, colors, and textures?
Well, I can give you a demonstration right now. You see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there is a little bit of light on my really little amount of hair.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is coming from a light there. Okay, it's not an accident. Now there is some light on that chair. There is another light that is out there, and I prepared it. Now you'll see that there is a little bit of shadow.
Right.
Okay, so all these elements are creating a bit of a 3D perception, even though we are in a 2D medium. Okay, the fact that on this side of my face there is more of a shadow, and there is a little bit of splash of light here. Right. This is called Rembrandt lighting. Now, so just to say, all these things are designed.
Yes.
Okay. So I like creating this dance of light, and this is actually not quite as dramatic as I would like to do it, but I didn't want to be too.
Yeah, and I want to know, what exactly are your artistic styles and movements?
Artistic styles and movements. Well, the funny thing is, I actually did study at the Art Institute of Trieste, Italy.
Ah,
So studying art is something that I do all the time. But the one thing that really I keep going to is cinematography. You know,
yes.
I actually worked for a few years in Hollywood when I was living in California. It's not for me. I went back to photography, but the experience, the experience was amazing. It was amazing. I was on the set of 24, the show with was on set of The Office. I actually sat on Michael Scott's chair, and so. But it was more talking with the cinematographers and all the people behind the camera, the people who create, craft those beautiful images. And I keep looking at the cinema, at great, because if you really look at some movies, I mean, think about the Godfather. I mean, think about the opening scene of the Godfather. Vito Corleone talking, holding counsel for the people who need him. It's so dramatic. Look at the lighting there. Gordon Willis, the cinematographer, was known for his dramatic lighting. He was very, very fond of creating shadows and in movement. And when you work on a movie, it's even harder. It's much harder. There is the cinematography in The Crown, the show on Netflix.
Oh yes,
about the royal family. If you look at some scenes there, they're astounding. The photography is phenomenal. So I take a little bit from here and there. Whenever I see an image that really speaks to me, then I might incorporate some of that in my work.
Ah. So what other images, Paolo, actually speaks to you now?
Right now. Well, actually, I keep going to the photographers of Hollywood. That is really, it's an endless research. The interesting part to me is how they set the stage back then. Okay, because of the style of the era, creating the background, for several people is a challenge in itself. So I use a hybrid approach here, because since I work with one frame at a time, I don't need to use green screen. Okay, I can cut out my subjects using a solid background like that.
Wow.
Excuse me. So I have that advantage.
Yes, sir.
And so what I do is, based on the conversation with my clients, let's say that you want to be portrayed in a beautiful mansion with a gigantic fireplace and a grand piano, that kind of deal. Yeah? Okay, so all right. Now I need you to keep that image in your mind,
right?
Because we're going to do it in my little studio that looks absolutely nothing like that. Okay, but then I will, after I worked on the photography is just as the most minuscule part of the process. It takes, half a second or a second to take an image, and then I'll be working for hours on that single image. And what I do is I actually use 3D designing software to create the scene with the piano, the fireplace, the staircase, and all the kind of stuff. I create a 3D environment, and then I start moving it around and seeing where is the perfect frame. And when I get the perfect frame, I compose the two things together, and then I'll deliver it to you. So it's a process that works in that way.
Wow. So, what is the perfect frame for you as a portrait artist?
Perfect frame. Wow, you're talking about something that is more instinctive than rational. So I don't like symmetry.
Mm,
Okay, I like to keep things off kilter a little bit.
sure.
Um, Now you're looking at directors like I think it was Wes Anderson
Oh, yes.
from. He likes everything centered.
Mm.
You look at all the frames, all the compositions. Like people are deadpan in the center. I'm not that. It's exactly the opposite. But I respect that. I'm not saying that is bad.
Yes.
Not at all.
Right.
Everybody has a different style, so
Sure.
you know, absolutely. I like things a little bit with some tension in it,
Yes.
and I like to have. So I will pose my clients, for example, I'll give you some directions on how to create body language that is creating maybe a little bit of tension, some power or fun. It depends again, what conversation we have, but body language and expression are what really create the portrait. And so it's part of the process of, I don't shoot, I don't go like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I like to make take one frame and make it count.
Yes.
And until we're there, it makes no sense to shoot for what, you're
Right.
creating a lot of noise for nothing. So it's better for me to spend some time talking with the person, and when I see that they are in the right frame of mind, you can see it from the eyes.
Yes.
Okay, we are, and if you ever been in front of a camera, which is now recording video like now, but you're not camera shy, obviously.
Right.
But if you have to make it count, you have to be like, looking at the camera with intention.
That's right.
I think if you're like this, it makes no sense for me to take this. Like, then what I do? What do I do with that? Language is conveyed with expression and body language, and body position. So,
Yes.
it's creating a little bit of tension, a little bit of movement, making it three-dimensional, maybe a little off kilter, maybe a little off center. Depends.
Wow. And going into the future, Mr. Paolo, I wish I had more time to speak to you, obviously, but Zoom is telling me no. But how would you just draw your future right now, if you could, with a portrait?
My future?
Yes, sir.
That's an interesting question, because everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. You've seen the examples of AI, and of course, every time I'm a technologist at heart. Actually, I used to be a software engineer. That's how I moved to the US from Italy. Okay. So technology is very much what I know intimately, and I seen that every time there is a new iteration of technology, people ask, "Oh, this is going to be obsolete."
Right.
So let me put it in this way.
Sure.
We had the quilt for writing. We had the fountain pen.
Right.
We had the typewriter. So if I give Stephen King a little pencil, and a notepad, he's going to write a $1 million novel. Joe Grisham, same thing. You give them the most rudimentary tool that will create something wonderful. If you give the best tool to somebody who has absolutely no creativity and no desire to, there is nothing comes out. It doesn't matter. So technology, to me, is always at the service of creativity. And every time there is a new technology, say, okay, that means we can do something else. And but at the end of the day, those images from MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, created in the 1930s by people like George Horrell, people are using a modern tool, computer, with Pinterest today to look at those images. So it's always a challenge of creativity. And so as I was telling you, I'm using the lighting and the style from the 30s, but then I'm using 3D technology to create. So tomorrow I might be able to just say, hey, computer, give me a mansion with a grand piano and a staircase, and make it look like it's taken with a 50 millimeter lens with a camera 1 meter and 30 centimeters from the floor, tilted at 5 degrees, and will give it to me. It's like, great, now I'll take it and I'll put it together in a composition of my own. We use technology. It's not the other way around. When technology uses us, then we lost.
Yeah. And this is probably a redundant question too, but what is the biggest difference between the 1930s and now when you think of portraits?
Yeah. A lot of things happened. So there is a formality. There is a formality that existed back then. Of course, the fashion is different. Although I can see that people are embracing some of the fashion of the time, and as you know, everything is cyclical. So we have possibilities that they were not available at the time. Think about it. The cameras, for example, that they were using, they were like this humongous piece of furniture that were like made out of wood with a big glass pane, and the image was appearing on this glass pane upside down. And they had a little curtain, you couldn't move the camera that much. Of course, we can today very easily, although my camera is always on a stable support. But then film was very slow. Lenses were very slow, meaning that they would let the light go through. A lot of things have changed. Now we have a more spontaneous style. We have more tools. We have more flexibility.
Sure.
So it's always a matter of mixing things together. You take, what was eternal in the sense of artistic value on one period, you mix it together with the needs of today's society, and then it goes inside here and comes out filtered and changed, hopefully for the better.
So what is that artistic value today?
Artistic value? That is the eternal question. How do you qualify art? How do you say this is art and this is not? It's in the eye of the beholder, just to use a cliche. You know what? I can actually answer that a little bit in my limited way. Artistic value is based on intentionality. So if you are creating something, and you don't have to necessarily obtain what you had in mind at the beginning, but you must do something that is intentional. So an accident is just that. But if I create a portrait based on an idea, based on a certain type of lighting, so when we do portraits, there are choices. I can use a certain camera body. I can use a certain lens. One of the things people don't know often, if they're not photographers, is that different lenses create different effects. People heard the phrase, "Oh, the camera adds so many pounds," whatever that. It's not true. It's the lens.
Yes.
It's the lens. So the lens, I can use a lens that makes the face wider, or a lens that can make the face narrower. And so, well, if I have a person with a very narrow face, I might just have a different perspective. I have a person with a fuller face. Maybe I'll use an arrow. It's a choice.
Yes.
That's artistic choice.
Right.
It's an intentionality, and then lighting and imposing and angles can change so much.
Yeah.
But that, I think that when you have an intentional choice and you have a result that is, along those choices, then you have possibly an artistic expression.
Wow. Wow. That is such amazing information there.
You're too kind.
Yes. And what other flexibilities do you want to have next when it comes to photography and portraits?
Well, I'm currently working out of my home studio.
Okay.
So I'd love to move to a larger space. That is where I will have more flexibility. Right now, I'm okay. I can work in this way, but obviously, I would like to have a taller ceiling.
Yes. Yes, sir. Well, Paulo Ciccone, thank you so much for your time, and again, welcome to Quentin's Close-Ups.
Sorry.
Thank you for your time here on Quentin's Close-Ups. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Quentin. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it greatly.